Hi, Seth. Good evening to you.
Hey, thank you. Good morning. Good morning to you, since we're on the other side of the world, apparently.
Ay- Yes, we are. Thank you for saying yes to be interviewed today. My name is Nicolette. I am the creator for the podcast titled You're Worthless. Read that again. The juxtaposition of your very soul. When I read your profile, it is something that found remarkable. A lot of people probably have gone through things like what you have gone through. And I am a person who would like to hear and listen to what they had to say once they get to the other side, because I too have experienced some certain things, some serious things in my life. So
hmm
I appreciate you being here, and therefore I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I would love to read about your introduction to our listeners today, and then we can get right into our conversation. How do I pronounce your surname?
Oh,
Seth Gale. Okay.
yep,
All
yep.
right. So, hey everyone, we have Seth Gehle here with us. Seth Gehle is a survivor of childhood abuse and trauma. After his father nearly killed his mother when he was 2 years old, he grew up with a single mother of three children. Around 10 years of age, his mother became abusive and addicted to hard drugs like crack and cocaine. This would lead him down a path to being molested by a grown man. After reporting and putting his abuser away, Seth has moved on and done incredible things with his life. Today, he is a soon to be author, or maybe an author right now, of his upcoming memoir, Strength Beyond the Shadows. He is also an 8 year combat veteran, award winning construction professional, and motivational speaker. He is using his story to provide education, hope, and inspiration to the world and show them how to be resilient even in their darkest day. That is something, Seth. Can you share with us, like, I know I read it in your bio, but what was it really like growing up as Seth Gale?
Well, it was certainly tough. Well, growing up without a father is already hard enough. You're already subjected to a lot of different things. Statistically speaking, when you don't have a father, you're more likely to be, criminal, drug addict, things like that. You're more likely to get into more problems as you get older. So, without having a father, I was already in that bad group. Then moving into my mother, who would eventually get kind of abusive, she would start to, well, I say kind of, but she was close hand punching and I always grab me by the face, and that was like her thing, was to grab me by my face, and she slammed my head against the wall a few times. And yeah, when I was like maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, that's when things really started to kind of pick up. And I think maybe it had something to do with we were big enough to start getting hit like that. Maybe when we were like 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, we weren't big enough to like really get abused physically because probably hurt some little kids. Although we would get, I mean, we still got hurt at that age too. But yeah, when I remember being like 10 years old and seeing my mom smoke weed with my sisters, and we're all a year apart. So, and I'm the middle child. So my sisters would be like 9 and 11 smoking weed with my mom and all of her friends. And around that time is when she started to get very, very bad, and she was punching us. And because of that, your home life, you don't have a father, you have drugs in the house, and you're getting abused by your mom. And there's just no love. Like there's no love in the house. You find an outlet, right? And so my outlet was I ended up meeting a guy through a friend, and this guy was like 30 at the time, and would end up hanging out with him on the weekends, and we'd go up there and play video games and hang out, eat pizza, and drink pop all weekend. And it was like a kid's like dream hangout. There was no rules. You could do whatever you wanted. So I'd go up there Friday night, Saturday night, and after a few months of going there, he would begin to molest me. And over the course of the next nearly 6 years, it's about 5.5 years it went on. I went on to experience everything you can experience sexually. As he proceeded to molest me. I was 12 years old. My mom was taken away from me. That was like a crazy day in its own. And then, so she was taken away from me. My grandparents would end up adopting me about 4 or 5 months later. And I continued to be molested by this guy because I kind of defended him. And I wanted to hang out with him because you kind of get in this like weird psychological like war with somebody, and it messes you up pretty bad. So then at 13 years old, the guy would end up eventually raping me, and then that would happen a few more times between 13 and 15. But right before I turned 15, I reported the guy, because he was about to start, or he had either already started or he's about to start molesting one of my younger friends who was hanging out with me as well at his house. And so I kind of reported him to stop the whole cycle. I could see it kind of happening while I was up at his house. So I reported him to stop the cycle and protect my friend. And that was back in 2011. And so the guy got 10 years in prison. So he would actually be free today. But fortunately enough, he died in prison in 2019 before he was like a year away from getting out, and he ended up dying. And so that was I was basically 16 years old when that happened. I was a month away, and then finished up high school, joined the army, and that was like the end of my childhood basically, especially with like all the traumatic things from 16 to 18. Nothing really bad happened to me. A couple crazy incidents here and there, but I was doing pretty well from that point forward. Aside from, I never had therapy, so I was definitely doing things. Looking back on it, I know that were wrong, and I just didn't realize it at the time how much my childhood had affected me. So that was like, I guess, the 5 minute version of my childhood, and we can talk about whatever bit of that you want to talk about, and dive into that.
Um, I don't know. First off, I am so sorry that somebody had to go through all of that. When I read your profile, I'm like, okay, I don't know if it's right for me to interview him because I would never imagine that happening to anybody, and I wouldn't want anybody to experience those kind of things. And for you to be out here to be talking to strangers, myself, like for those listening, we haven't even had any contact prior to this interview today, and today is the first time hearing it from Seth himself. Yeah. Okay.
It's
Yeah,
yeah, I know it's a lot to digest.
it
And
is.
like
And
when
for
I
you
put
to
the
smile right now, like Seth, you have my respect, and I'm sending all the love and light your way.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's, you have a couple options, and what else am I supposed to do, right? Am I supposed to sit here and cry and give up and just give into all the, like, the hate and the negative emotion and things like that? Like, I can't do that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you can, but there's one thing that happens when you do that. Like, if you just give up, and well, there's a few things, but it all eventually leads down one path, which is generally taking your own life, right? So
Yeah.
a lot
Like,
of people who go through that. So,
you have moments that you
oh
feel
yeah,
like you're
yeah. I mean, when I was about 9 or 10 years old, I started to contemplate suicide almost daily. I remember being like 10 years old, and I would sit outside. I'd sit on the ledge of my bedroom window, and it was on the second floor. And I would always think to myself, like, if I just land just right, I'll kill myself. Like, I'll die. And so I would always think about, like, if I get out the window just right and I land on my head, snap my neck, I'll be dead, and it'll all be over. But on the flip side of that is, if it doesn't, this sounds twisted, but if it doesn't go through, now I'm just this like asshole who jumped out his window, and then you have to deal with the side effects of like the pain, and so it's kind of like, it's not funny, but it's
disability.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, if you're going to do it, you got to do it right. And so
Right.
that's honestly like what held me back for a long time. But yeah, I mean, I would think about it daily, and then even as I got older, I just constantly thought about it, just constantly wanted to end everything. Time something would go wrong, I would think about it. I would end up joining the army, and then I was in the army for 8 years, and especially the last like 6 months I was in the army, it was really bad. It's probably as close as I've ever been to ready to kill myself. I had access to a gun, and obviously being in the military, but then I had my own personal gun too. And I just thought about it nonstop. Every time something would happen, it would send me into like a rage, and it's like very consuming. So when you do have those thoughts, it'll take over. It'll take over your whole day. Like, it's like it's like a fantasy. It's like you think about maybe going to a football game or going to watch a movie. Like, it sounds fun. That's kind of how I was with the suicide things. Is I was just kind of like, it
Random.
was just it was just on my mind all the time.
Mm.
Um, it was like, yeah, you just had this like real crazy fantasy about it, and once I got out of the army, a lot of the stress went away, and I don't, I got out of the army, I got into a really good job, and I started doing really well, and a lot of the thoughts kind of went away suddenly. I don't really know what happened, but it they just kind of were gone. So it's been about 3 years now since I've been out of the Army, a little over 3 years. I haven't really struggled with the like well, a little bit of depression, but I haven't struggled with like the suicide ideation as much in the last 3 years. But yeah, certainly for probably 10 to for probably 15, 16 years. I mean, just like daily thoughts.
Would you say your time in the army has helped you in any way to curb those thoughts or to just move your thoughts away from whatever that you've experienced before?
Yeah, the Army it was what I needed for sure. I needed structure because I didn't have like a good mother and a father to like help me. So I didn't have like somebody to teach me different things about money and life and just things like that. So the Army kind of was like my parent. They were like my parents, and so they helped kind of build some structure and give me a good life. And I had some of my best friends I've ever had in my life while I was in the Army. So that definitely helps kind of curb the thoughts. On the flip side, the Army is also very stressful. And I would end up
Mm-hmm.
eventually getting married, and I have 2 kids. And so I had both my kids while I was in the Army. And so, I had my daughter, and then I went to Afghanistan. So my daughter was like 6 months old when I went to Afghanistan. I went to Afghanistan for 9 months, and I missed that whole part of her life. She might have been older than that, actually. I think she was like 9 months old. So I missed her whole second year of life, basically. And that was tough. And I had a bunch of really bad thoughts while I was there. And so the Army was it was good in a lot of great ways, but it's also very stressful. And when you have like PTSD or the trauma, anytime you get stressed out, it takes you back to those real bad places in your head. So
Mm-hmm.
there was good and bad from the Army.
Right. Well, okay.
So.
I'm having a mental image of the things that you just mentioned. Okay. Thank you. So, how has your trauma affected your relationships today, in your
Yep.
opinion?
Yeah, great question. A couple things, like this is kind of an odd one, but I have a affinity for like male role models. Like I get like attached to guys quickly if they're like any kind of role model to me. So I have like coaches. I do jujitsu now, and I have coaches that I get attached to, like a father son kind of feeling to me, like just because I admire them, like I admire what they're doing, and so I care a lot about what they think of me, and I always want to make them like proud. I always want to make them happy, and I also always work hard. Like so, when I go to jujitsu, I always work really hard. I always train really hard, because I feel like this connection, that I'd never had a father in my life. So because of that, you're always chasing that kind of connection, and it's kind of innate to me. It's kind of a weird thing that I can't help, but it's not. It hasn't affected me negatively as an adult, anyways. So that's kind of like a weird twist. But that's just normal for people who grew up without a father. And then, as far as being like molested goes and the sexual abuse, because everything that you can experience to include sex, I had experienced by the age I was and that was with a grown man. So that messes with you already, right?
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't gay. I knew I wasn't like this weirdo. I knew I wasn't. There was nothing wrong with me, but these things were happening to me. And so for a long time, I was scared that I had HIV. I was scared I had AIDS. I was scared to. That was part of the reason why I was scared to report, because it went on for 6 years, and it happened every single weekend. This wasn't like a once a month thing or like every couple months. It was every single weekend of my life. I would go to this guy's house. So probably 45 to 50 weekends out of the year, I was at his house, and a lot of those times where I was being molested. It's like most of the time. Because of that, I was very sexually motivated as a young man. So after I reported him, anytime I would talk to a girl, I was just really sexually motivated. So I always wanted to have sex. Always thought that like we were going to have sex all the time, and that was just like normal, and it wasn't. Obviously, I was very aggressive as a young man, and I never did anything that would get me in trouble. I respected the boundaries, but I also did not respect boundaries. So I just assumed that we were going to have sex all the time. So whenever I'd hang out with girls, I'd get very handsy, and then they would say no, and then I would. The thing was, is I was trying to convince them, like let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. And I'm not proud of that at all. Like I really hate that happened, and it took me until my adulthood to realize like what had happened and like why I was acting like that. and there's no excuse for it really. I just wish I would have had a better understanding, and it's kind of what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to teach people like what happens and why some guys may be experiencing this feeling, or even some girls may be experiencing this feeling. If girls are sleeping around a lot, there may be a reason behind that, and that's kind of what was happening to me. I slept around a lot, and from the time I was 18, excuse me, time I was 18 until I was probably well, until I was married, I slept around a lot. So that was, I think I got married when I was 20. And so, for 4 5 years, whatever, the relationships with girls, they didn't matter. I was never in a relationship with girls until I met my wife. My wife is the first girl that I ever dated. So that was kind of like a weird thing. I would just sleep with girls and leave them alone. You just, it's normal. It's normal for what happened to me to experience that behavior later in life. And then after you get married, it's like even worse. It's like trying to be, intimate with somebody, and you have different flashbacks and you have different. But my wife, she used to like jokingly grab my butt, and like any woman would do, and it would just like send a shock through me because like it just takes you back. And so you kind of feel like weird, and we've talked about it. Like me and my wife are very open about it. I have to let her know that these things bother me, and certain things that bother me about intimacy. One of them is like public display of affection. For some reason, it I'm working on it now, but it kind of bothers me to be in public and holding hands or kissing or hugging. It just, for some reason, it just bothers me, and I attribute it to what happened to me as a kid. So yeah, that's like it's affected my relationships in a lot of ways. One thing I'm glad it hasn't affected is my relationship with my kids. If anything, it's made me and my kids a lot closer, because growing up with the way I did, and then also being molested for so long, they make it a point that my kids are just like an absolute priority, and I love them to death. And there's nothing more important than my children. And I always reinforce that with them. And I think I'm a very present father. I'm a very focused and intentional father. That's one thing I'll say is maybe beneficial of what happened to me is I have raised my children to be just very good little kids, and I'm very intentional about what I do with them. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about now wife.
mhm.
How do you think she has helped? Like, what made you think that you want to settle down with her? Like, there must be something that happened, or something that you say, okay, I'm ready. I want to move forward, and I want to build a life. Like, she must be really special. Like, I can
Yeah,
feel it.
yeah, yeah. So we met when I was in the army. Yeah, we met on her birthday. I messaged her, and I think I followed her on Instagram, whatever. Messaged her, and she attended a college that was near the army base, and so that's kind of how I found her. And I messaged her, asked her if she needed a designated driver for her birthday. She had just turned 21, so I was gonna drive her and her drunk friends
Chauffeur.
around. Yeah, exactly. And she didn't, so I actually didn't hang out with her that day. It was the following weekend. We hung out. We got dinner together. We hung out, and then it was pretty much it from there. I mean, I don't know. We just never turned back, and so we've had a few rough patches along the way. A few months in, we had a good little patch where it was like, look, I basically had to explain to her that of who I was, because I was just different, and I am different, and I have my moments, and I have problems, and so I told her that. I told her that a few months in. I was like, look, I'm jacked up, and I'm just gonna let you know, like I've had a terrible life, and so if you want to be with me, like this is some of the things you're going to have to work with me and deal with. And she's never been discouraged about it, which is nice. When you walk into a relationship with somebody who's really jacked up and she's not discouraged about that at all, that's nice, obviously. But she's just, she's basically everything that I'm not, and so it's cool and it feels good to be with somebody like that. Where like when we first met, I got to meet her family. Her family's very well off, and they very well taken care of, and they've done very well for themselves. But when I met her, I didn't realize that. Like I didn't realize, you people would say she came from money, right? She like that's what people would say is like she came from money is a good way to put it. But I never realized that until I met her family. we hung out for, probably, I don't know, 2, 3 months before I went and met her family. I met her family on Christmas, within a few months of dating her. When I remember pulling up to her house, and I was just thinking to myself, like, holy shit, like, this is a nice house. Like,
This.
yeah, this is like crazy. Like, this is like they had a pool in the backyard, like this like waterfall cave, like this crazy house, and they all have like super nice cars, and we go out to this real nice dinner, and it's just like real crazy experience. I'm like, what the hell? And the
Who
reason,
is she?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Who is she? And the reason why it threw me off is because she was just so humble and so like down to earth and just quiet. Like I never picked that up from, and I can read people from a mile away, but for some reason with her, I never caught that. I never realized that she was like that. So that kind of was really cool to see. And just seeing her interaction with her parents. Like I said, when I say she's everything that I'm not, she's got this. She's genuinely happy, and I see her interact with her parents. She's happy. She has brothers and sisters, and they've got this big happy family. Her grandma is like the sweetest lady in the world, and I'm just so glad to be with her because I get to be a part of all these other pieces as well. So me and her dad have a pretty good relationship. Me and her whole family, I would say, have a really good relationship. But especially her grandmother, she's like the sweetest lady. Because I'm with my wife, my kids get to experience this big family, and my kids have never met my family. They've met my brother, but that's it. So they don't know my mom, they don't know anybody else, my dad, they don't know anybody else in my family, and they kind of ask questions now. But to answer your question, that's kind of what my wife has done for me. Is she is just everything that I'm not. I've had all these problems, she has not. And so it's just kind of like this completing the puzzle, all these missing pieces that I have, she's kind of able to fill that void. It's not been easy, like marriage never is. Marriage is very hard, but you have to be intentional, and you have to be smart and respectable, and you have to be able to talk to each other and communicate, and we're able to do that, despite getting mad at each other occasionally. We're able to sort through our differences and basically just tell each other, like, hey, like, you did this and it pissed me off, and
Mm.
this is why. And then I tell her the same thing. Well, okay, well, I'm sorry that happened. And then if something happens with me, I tell her. But yeah, she's just everything that I'm not. And she that's kind of what happened. Like I said, she was humble, she was good looking and down to earth and all these different things. And so it just kind of, I don't know why. Like, I mean, I guess that's why I settled, well, I say settled, but not settled, but settled down with her, right? That's why I kind
Yes.
of,
You
she
felt
was the
like
one.
it
So
was time, yeah.
yeah, 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 yep. So, and we
I'm
got we
so
got
moved
married.
right now. Like,
Yeah,
from whatever you mentioned in the first part of your story, and then to now, and this is why I'm like, okay, I want to know. Genuinely, for me, like, this is me. This is off script for those
yeah,
listening. We're just having a conversation. So, okay, how do you think communication? I was saying, how do you think how important is communication with your partner, especially when like you mentioned before, you didn't even go through therapy, so a lot of things you have to work them out by yourself, and that must be tough. How important do you think that is, and what were the challenges that you have
yeah.
talking
So
about it? Hmm.
yeah, well, the communication part is really important because, like, for example, when me and my wife first started dating, I have different tendencies, I have different reactions and different like opinions about things, about life, because of the experiences that I have, right? I have a completely different perspective on life compared to my wife. We just see things differently because we grew up differently, and that's just the nature of it. So unless we communicate with one another and understand why she sees things a certain way and why I see things a certain way, we're never going to like mesh. I mean, me and my wife are completely on complete opposite ends of the spectrum as far as like people and how we grew up. Even today, like, we're not that much alike. We have some similarities, but if we're just very different people, and that's okay. The communication part, you have to. So because you have had a hard time, or you've had a hard life, or you've gone through something traumatic, the world doesn't owe you any favors, and it's not the world's responsibility to walk around on eggshells, right? So I can't. go through my relationship with my wife or my children or anybody, even other family members, and expect them to just tiptoe because I've had a hard time.
Yeah.
That's a victim mentality. You can't do that. You can't walk around and say, well, you don't know me, you don't know what I've been through,
Mm.
and that gives me the right to be upset about anything I want to be upset about. And it's like, no,
To
that's not
act
how
the
this
way that
works.
you're acting.
Yeah, exactly. So people who have, and I did that for a long time. Like, just to be clear, for a very long time, I was very much like that. Like, you don't know me, you don't know what I've been through, you don't know what it's like, so I can do whatever and say whatever I want because I've had a harder life than you. And I mean, as a young man, I got a lot of credit for like being this honest person, but I wasn't just honest; I was an asshole. And you can be candid and you can be honest about things and not be an asshole and just trying to piss people off. So that's what I did for a long time. And it eventually took me like reading some books about leadership and psychology and things like that to understand that I was just being an asshole, you know? And so for my wife and in my family and her family and all that, you have to have those conversations and let them know like, hey, like this is what happened to me. So sometimes I do feel this way. I'm not justifying it, but sometimes like these things happen and I don't know why, but my brain just takes me to this place. And when you're able to have that open dialogue and conversation, it is hard, very hard for me to do with my wife for some reason. You know, it's that she's the closest person to me, and so sometimes it's kind of hard to connect on that level. Yeah, it's just different talking to her about a lot of things. You know, you don't want to be like or weak or anything like that. You know, like you want to be this like strong, trusted person, and I'm with her all the time, and so you know you start opening up those doors and she starts to figure out like where your problems are and she's with you every day. I have this conversation with you and we may never talk again, right? We may go our separate ways and boom.
Hmm.
And so like, I don't have to look at you every day like, hey, we just had this conversation
Yeah.
and like
Exactly.
that was hard, that was tough. So
Yeah.
the communication is very important. Like I said, you can't go through life not talking about your problems and expecting everybody in the world to know you, understand you, and then tiptoe around you. If you want people to help you and tiptoe and understand you, you have to talk to them, and that's just the most important thing you can do.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. I have nothing to add to that. And you mentioned about reading leadership
Yeah.
books. What did you read and what did you find out? Like, how did your perspective change?
Yeah, so a couple of books that I really picked up on. One of them is a pretty typical book. Is called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, which is like a standard like practice leadership. Um,
I haven't read it.
anybody who yeah anybody who wants to like understand themselves and own their lives and be a better person, be a better leader, can read it. Even though it's written by a Navy SEAL and it's very like hardcore, anybody can learn from that. And he teaches his principles to every big company in the world. Like they go out and they train anybody on their principles because they're able to apply it to business and life and everything. So he's writing children's books and everything now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Can you repeat that? Extreme Ownership by
yep. Go Willink, yeah.
Jocko Willink. Okay, I think
Yep.
I've come across that name.
Yeah.
Okay.
You Google extreme ownership, it'll be the first thing you see. It'll
Okay.
pop up immediately. But it's just a really good book. It just it talks to you about like your ego getting in the way. And that's what I read when I was like 20, 22, 23 or so, right before my daughter was born. I read that book and he's basically telling you like it doesn't matter what happened to you. It doesn't matter who you think you are. It doesn't matter like you know, because a lot of people their ego gets in the way, and I was one of those people. I just like I said, I had this thing on my shoulder. Like I know what I've been through in my life, and I know you haven't been
Therefore,
through
like
it.
yeah, it's like you walk around feeling entitled to
Yep,
people. Like you you need to treat me better because you don't know what I've been through.
exactly,
And I'm pretty sure you will not even survive if you had to go through what I had to go through.
exactly. And so that's what people do, right? And so with that, he just talks a lot about different things. You know, you may have a bad interaction with somebody, and somebody can say, "Well, that person hates me," and it's like, "Well, how do you know they hate you?" It's like, "Well, I just do." It's like, "How have they told you that?" And it's like, "No." Well, it's like, well, then how do you know? And it's like, well, I just do. And so you have to eliminate that. And that what that is it's your ego talking. It's you saying, I know because I know. That's the
Mm.
only justification that I have, is that I just know, which is that's your ego talking, and you got to get rid of that. So, it's a really good like mental thing. It just teaches you to, you know, think positively about situations as well. If somebody says something negative towards you or about you, or they act a certain way and it kind of throws you off, there's a positive spin you can always put on it. Like, oh, maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe this happened, maybe that happened. You just don't know the whole story. So unless you do, you can't paint that picture, because if you do, you start to send yourself down a bad path. And so his it's a very good leadership book. It's all just about owning. It doesn't matter what happens to you. It's your responsibility on how you respond, right? So extreme ownership is not just saying everything is my fault. This is what I'm going to do to fix the problem. So if somebody drives into your car, that's not your fault, and that does suck. But what are you going to do moving forward? Like, that's
Mm.
the ownership portion, the accounting. And so that's like with life, right? If somebody does something to you, what are you going to do moving forward? Are you going to like blame this person? Well, the blame doesn't get you anywhere. You can blame them all day long, but it doesn't get you anywhere. So you might as well own it. Just take responsibility for what happens from that point forward, because you can't change the past. You can only impact how you. And so, for example, like today, kind of a crazy situation. We have a bearded dragon, like a lizard, and
Oh.
we were outside running. We were outside running around with him, and my daughter got too close and he was being crazy anyways, and he bit her on the finger,
Oh
and he
no.
actually yeah he actually took a chunk off the end of her finger.
Oh my
It
god.
was bleeding. Yeah, it was bleeding pretty bad, and so like we come inside, and it was real hectic. It wasn't terrible, but my wife was taking care of her, and we're both at the sink, and my wife said something, my daughter was screaming, so I kind of said something to my wife said something back to me, and we're all like yelling at each other in the kitchen, you know? And
I'm
so
so
the
sorry. This is not a funny. It's not a funny
no,
situation, but I can imagine the household. Like,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So, but the reason why I bring that up is because we had plans, because it's Mother's Day, so we were going to go and
Yes, it's
and
Mother's
do
Day.
something, right?
Yes.
So we go get in the car, and I just said, hey, look, I said, listen, guys, what happened, right? It was scary. It hurt. You were bleeding. It's okay. I yelled. Mama yelled. We're not going to let this ruin our day. And this is actually the first time I've ever done this, but I just said, like, look, everybody's got a thermometer, right? Everybody's got the thermostat on the wall, right? And if you set the temperature, like if somebody comes in and turns it one way or another and you don't like it, well, it's your responsibility to fix it, and you can fix it. There's a multiple different ways you can do that. But one of those things I did, I just sat in the car and I said, look, we're going to have a
Hmm.
good day. Why? Because I love you guys. And and it's Mother's Day. We're going to go get some ice cream. We're going to go up to the river and hang out, and boom, that's what we're going to do. And so it kind of shifted the whole mood, and we did. We went up there, we had a good time, and that was that. So, but that's what the Extreme Ownership book is about. That's probably one of the best books you can read, in my opinion. That really helped me kind of grow up and understand that my past is not a crutch. It's a tool. And everything that I've been through in my life it's just adding tools to the bag that I can use in certain situations. And it's tools and things that I can leverage that other people cannot. So if you have not been through what I've been through, that's okay. I have the ability to maybe reach certain people, right? So if I go out and speak, I can relate to so many people. I can relate to people without fathers. I can relate to people who grew up around drugs and violence and abuse. I can relate to people who've been raped or sexually abused or molested. I can relate to so many different veterans, combat veterans. I can relate to so many people. So I'm using my past as a tool to advance my life forward now, as opposed to sitting in it and sulking in it and crying about it, because it's not going to get you anywhere.
You have my ultimate respect all the way from Malaysia. Really, Seth. Whew. I'm glad I had this conversation with you today. Okay, so maybe we can take our listeners back to the first part. Like, so if someone they not clinically diagnosed that they have depression or maybe having suicidal ideation,
Mm-hmm.
how do you think, like, what is your advice if there are people who find themselves like there's no way out, like right now?
One of the easiest things you can do, so like when I was bad and I wanted to end things, a lot of it was you just don't think you can make another day, or you're just tired of going, you're just exhausted, you're tired of being here. So you have to find like a purpose. You have to find some sort of reason to be here, and you have to keep executing on that,
Mhm.
right? And one of the easiest things to do for me was exercising. Like physically, I train all the time. I exercise all the time. And the reason why I say that is it's easy. Even if you just go out and take a walk, or you work out in your garage or your house, or you go to a gym, things kind of build a routine. And so if you have a gym or a routine that you're following, like you've got to be there Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever your routine is. You have this calendar, you have these things that you got to show up for, and so it keeps you in that mind frame of like, I need to be here for tomorrow. I need to be there tomorrow. When people stop running out of things to do, and there's no reason for me to be here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I don't have anything planned this whole week, then you start to get lonely, and you start to justify like, well, I don't nobody's called me in a week, so I don't have really,
Yeah,
no, I don't have a reason.
I'm not
So
worthy for people to hang out with me.
exactly, exactly. So going to a gym is one of the best things you can do. You can build a community there, like group fitness classes, or like I do jujitsu. So I have my friends from jujitsu that I talk to pretty much every single day, and it gives you that connectivity, that community as well, right? So, but also it gives you the capability, right? So when I say capability, I think when we are capable humans, it builds confidence. And so what I mean by that is, like, if I go to the gym, I can work out, right? And I'm a little bit stronger. Well, now I'm a little bit more capable than I was yesterday, purely on physical attributes, purely on being stronger. I can do more things. I can pick the laundry up and go up the stairs, or I can, if we go outside, I can move things, I can do things, I can run, I can walk, I can climb mountains. When you do these physical things, it gives you, you're more capable in life. You are able to do more things. You may be able even to defend yourself. I can walk into a room, for example, and 9 times out of 10, I can pretty much hang with anybody in the room. I can survive, right? Whereas if you have no physical capabilities whatsoever, and you've never trained anything, and you walk into a room, you may not have like the negative thoughts or negative doubts, but for me, because I just know I'm comfortable in my environment, right? So if I walk into a gas station and somebody's being crazy, I know that if this guy gets out of hand, I can probably de-escalate the situation.
Mm.
And it's a capability thing. And what that does is it creates confidence. That knowing is just confidence, right?
Oh,
So
I love that.
yeah,
Yes,
you
that
work you work
knowing.
out. Exactly. So if you work out, you get stronger, you're more confident. You just are. It is a byproduct of going to the gym. You're going to get stronger, and you're going to be more confident. It is inevitable. When you wake up and you work out early in the morning before work, well, now you've shown up to work and you've already worked out. And you look around, how many other people have worked out before, that day? And it's probably little to none. So it's that confidence factor of like, I did this, like I did something hard. When you do hard things, it builds character. It's I mean, literally, it is in our DNA. It is in our as a human, we are built to do and endure. And when you are able to suffer, and you're able to endure the suffering, that builds endurance. So the more you suffer, whether it's going to the gym, or even if it's around the house, doing the dishes, doing the laundry, cleaning the whole house, the more you put yourself in that state of suffering, of like going through pain or doing something that you don't want to do, it is building endurance. And as you build endurance, the more endurance you have, it's going to produce more and more character. And so what does that mean? It's just the I have been through so much in my life that I have built this immense amount of endurance for a lot of things, whether it's physically, emotionally, whatever. I can endure quite a bit as a man. Because of that, when these bad things happen, my character has already been tested, right? My character has already been built. So when these bad things happen, I'm good. Like I know I can get through this. As a matter of fact, I will look at other people sometimes thinking to myself, like, what, this is not that bad. Like, you guys are okay. You can get through this.
Mm.
They just have not been through what I've been through. So their mountain might be here, where mine is like maybe 20 stories higher, because I've already endured so much of that pain. And so I have that character. The suffering produces endurance, which the endurance will turn into character. And character, when you are this strong, capable man or woman, and you already developed this character, it inspires other people, right? So when you see somebody that you really like, it's like, well, why do you really like that person? Well, that person has done this and this and this. Okay, so they've gone through it, right? They've suffered. right? And they've endured, and now they've turned into the person that you really admire. So that it's just a cycle, and that's how it works. So, um,
Yeah. Thank
yeah,
you. I think it's also good for the listeners to not get confused with, like, because humans are wired to go towards pleasure and avoid pain. And when you said the context of suffering, it means like putting yourself, testing yourself to the limits, going to the gym, and not in the sense that, because suffering, becoming a victim mentality of your past, and that's suffering too. But when you say suffering, it means, in this context, is like really putting yourself up there, because and you know the good that will come out of it, like
yeah,
working out even though you feel like it is the worst day to work out, but you show up anyway. So that's the kind of activities, or the kind of mindset that builds your resilience and endurance. To be honest, once you get through that and you do it, however, whatever, in whatever frequency that you have set for yourself, it will pay off. Even though you see that, okay, right now I've just, okay, let's say a person says, I want to start running at least 1 kilometers, or just walk, and that one day you take that walk, even though it's rainy or it's drizzling, you still go out there. But then you'll experience something, because having, because it's, like I said, we are wired to just go towards pleasure. We do not want to feel pain, and it's different when somebody has gone through, you know, top military training. Like I've known people who've gone through that, and innately it is within them. Like there is
yeah,
no issue waking up at 5 o'clock. It is automatic. Like for me, at least, I can't speak for everybody. That I need to set my mind to, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. So everybody's on their journey, and everybody, it's in different, they have different circumstances. But like you mentioned, also everybody has that choice, right? At every moment.
yeah. Like you said, we are wired to take the easy road. That's
Yes.
human. That's human nature, right?
Yes.
But that is the what's the word for it, paradox maybe of it all, because even though we're wired to take this easy route, when we take that easy route, we're not satisfied. And it's just so
That's
to be
right.
true, if
That's
you go give a toddler, right, go to a 2 year old and give a 2 year old everything they want, just keep giving it to them, and they become three, they become four, they become five, just keep giving them everything they want, no matter what they want, give it to them. They're never satisfied. They never will be,
Mhm.
because they don't understand the value of the suffering. They don't understand the value of the journey. And so when you put them through the journey and you put them through the hard times, they become satisfied. That is the satisfaction. It is not the getting what you want. It is, I accomplished something that was hard, right? Even for a toddler, for my daughter, for example, she is 5, soon to be 6, and we've always gotten her water for her, right? Because she's not tall enough to reach and all those different things. Okay, so, but she is, and so instead of me going and getting her water, I'm like, no, like, you can do it. And the first few times, it was frustrating, right? She's like, oh, I can't get the lid off, and I can't open the fridge, and I can't. And I said, well, if you can't do it, then you're not going to get any water, because I know you can do it. You're being a baby right now. And she's 5 years old, and so I had to hammer that home, that like, you
That's
are
a
more
good one.
capable
Yeah.
than you realize. Like,
Mm.
you, and we go up to these mountains and we go crawl around these waterfalls, and they're 5 and they're 3, and we're on these steep rocks, and it's slippery and it's wet and it's kind of dangerous, maybe not crazy, but they could fall and get hurt like anybody else. Um, and they're scared. My daughter, she was coming down. We were up there last week, and she's coming down the side of this rock, and she looks at me and she says, and she didn't. I don't think she was really thinking about this, but she just kind of said it out loud. She said, "This is my opportunity to be brave." She said, "This is my chance to be brave." At 5 years old, and she was
Wow.
scared.
I had
She was sitting.
chills.
Yeah, she was sitting down on the rock, and she's got her hands down, and she's like sliding down inch by inch. And I was not going to help her. I said, "Look, if you want to come down here, you can come down here, but you got to do it yourself." And when you and that's that thing where, if I would have just grabbed her and picked her up and put her down there, it sure, she'd
She
have been
would have
happy,
thought that, okay, there's
but
always somebody who's gonna catch me if I'm in
exactly, and
if I'm in trouble, or
yeah,
if I cannot get through anything.
exactly.
That's character building.
It is, and anybody can do that, right? When like another thing I'll tell somebody is like when the water is deep or the mud is thick and you feel like you can't get through it, the water's too deep, you're drowning, or the mud is too thick and you just can't keep moving, your legs are getting too heavy, like life is testing you and you're right there. Like you're on that last little bit that you got to go and you're about to be finished. You're about to be rewarded. And life is going to reward you, but it is going to test you first. And without the
Mm.
test, there is no reward. You may get nice things in life, but the test has to come first. And if you do not get the test, then you will not appreciate the reward that you receive in life. So, this is all like there's levels to this of building this character and resilience and this mental toughness. And you have to understand all of these things and you have to apply them every single day or as much as you possibly can. And the more that you apply them and the more that you push yourself, the farther you're going to go, So there's a lot to it, but I've learned a lot in 29 years. I'm pretty happy with it.
Wow. When you were explaining things, I was already thinking in my head, like, because I do this every day and then I have at least 2 interviews. And sometimes, I love talking to people, but then you cannot help. There are times when you feel like, do I
Yeah,
really want to talk?
yeah,
But then I get up and I still sit here and I show up, Nicolette. There are people who, although they may not interact with you directly, but when they hear whatever that you're putting out there, probably it's gonna help is gonna have improve their lives, or just your message alone or the message of the speaker, the guest, is gonna help. So you have a bigger purpose than
yeah,
being a bum.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, so it's often, if you think of it on the other side, like, what are you giving back instead of you, why do I
yep,
need to do this, then it shifts your perspective, right? Because to me, I think it's in giving that you feel fulfilled the most. And also, coming back to what you said, the rewards would be sweeter because you have gone through them yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
So, well, thank you for that, Seth. Thank you so much. Okay, a few more questions, and I can let you go. Thank you for sharing your story. Like, I really
Sure.
appreciate it. Okay, so we're gonna pivot to a self-worth question, and the question for you here: seeking external help, such as therapy or counseling, can be beneficial for addressing self-worth issues. Now, I understand you did not go through that route, but that route. So, but what is your opinion? And if individuals are turning to this, how can they find the right resources and support for their needs?
I think it's absolutely critical. All right. I think whether you get therapy or you have good friends that you can talk to. Um, the thing I'll say with that, like the caveat, the warning, is if you're talking to your friends, you have to understand that you're talking to your friends. Okay.
Mm.
And you're not talking to a doctor, you're not talking to a therapist. So some of the things that they may say may not make sense, or it may offend you, or it may come off a certain way. I think a lot of people who go through a lot of trauma, they'll say something, or they'll announce something, or they'll tell
Or
their
they'll be
friends something.
biased because of the things that they've gone through.
Yeah, there's bias. And then
Mhm.
what'll happen a lot of times is somebody will say, like, for example, when I tell my story that I was molested for 6 years, right? And I kept going back to this guy's house, and it was my decision to go to his house, kind of. A lot of times people will almost immediately think, and they'll even say it, well, why did you keep going back if you didn't like it? Which is a typical response. And I have two options, right? I can get upset about that and be like, oh, why would you say that? And then I get all hurt and I'm all sad for a week. Or I can be like, look, this person has no idea how to talk to people. So I can't get mad at them when I drop this super heavy word on them or this super heavy story and they don't say what I want them to say, You can't get mad at somebody if you just pour out a bunch of information and they don't say exactly what you needed, right? So when you're talking to your friends or even a therapist, you have to understand that just as we started this conversation, you were at a loss for words, right? There's like, what are you supposed to say when somebody tells you all that? It's like, God, like I don't know what to tell you, and so for me,
That
I
has
can sit
never
there.
happened.
Yeah,
For all
well,
the people that I've interviewed, that has never happened to me.
it's happened to me almost every time, right? Every time I tell my story, people are just like, whoa, like, wait a minute, let me freaking digest this. When you're seeking help, you have to understand that they may not have the words for you. Then, keep doing it and just trust the process because as I've talked about it, it's like taking a knife out of the body every time. If I have 100 knives in me, every one of them that I get rid of, it just feels better and better, right? To get rid of that message. So you have to trust the process. There's a reason why people do therapy. And a lot of times when somebody shows up, they're upset because the first 2 3 sessions they weren't given the secret to life. They
Mm,
expect to go into therapy and be like, okay, I'm
I
good the
am
next day. Like,
cured.
yeah, I'm cured, right? Like that's not how it works. It takes time. And although I've never gotten any formal therapy, I've been doing podcasts and interviews now for the last like 3 or 4 months, and it's been very therapeutic for me because I'm able to get on here, have this conversation with you, and talk about it and process what happened. And you're just removing that knife every time. So whether you get formal therapy or talking to a friend or a trusted, somebody you can trust and confide in, you need to talk. You need to like decompress and get those feelings out of your body and say those things. For me, generally, I talk very viscerally and raw, and I will tell anybody the darkest details they want to hear. I mean, there's some really nasty, dark details in my story, and if people really want to get into it, then we can. If they don't, that's fine too. It just helps me heal. Like it just helps. So that's my
Yeah.
answer on the therapy question. Go get it.
Thank you. Just by
Yeah,
talking, that can save people's lives. Like it can save your life. To be honest, I started podcasting as well because it's therapeutic for me. Because
yeah,
I wanna know if why me, or is it only me that is experiencing this thing. Now you are by far the if I'm if there's a podcast I will remember the people that I've interviewed, it would be you would be on the top. Yeah, because of the things that you've shared and how much you've healed, Seth. Like,
yeah,
I can tell when you're talking. I am in awe, and I'm like, he has gone through so much, but then the way he's so composed here in front of me, and you can tell when somebody has done their work, their inner
yeah,
work, because it's not projected at all.
yeah,
Thank you, Seth. Thank you
yeah, yeah. Of
for
course.
doing the work, because when you're doing the work, it impacts me. We didn't even know that we existed before this interview, but right now I'm gonna walk away from this conversation with my mind change,
Yeah,
perspective change. So thank you.
yeah. Of course.
What is your heart's greatest wish, Seth?
And that's a good one. You know, the biggest thing that I can do, my biggest wish is to get my story out there for other people. Every time I've told my story, is I get incredible feedback every single time. Every time I tell it, I get feedback from so many people about how powerful it is and how much it's moved somebody, how good somebody feels about it. Understanding that you can go through all these traumatic things in life and still survive. And the reason why I'm telling my story now too is I had to come to a realization it's not about me anymore. It's not about what I went through. It's about what I can do to help others get through their problems. And there's 7 billion people in the world or whatever. Like how many more of them can I help? Like that's what I have to do at this point. I have to help other people. So there's so many kids who are going through what I went through and much worse than what I went through, right? They feel alone, worthless. They don't matter because they're being treated the way they are, whether they're 5 6 years old and they're addicted to drugs already. They're already being hooked on drugs and being trafficked around the world. That's happening. And so if I can find those people and help them heal, that is my wish. That's my heart's biggest wish is to be able to reach these people and pour my love into them and my story and inspire them, you know, to not be a statistic. They can grow up and they can still do amazing things in this world just as I have.
Thank you. Is there a mantra that you live by?
A mantra? I don't think so. I mean, I have a few things that I stick to, which is like understanding perspective and gratitude. If you are able to, I think you gain perspective 2 ways. You can either gain it through experience, whether you're born into a situation or you seek experience. So, for example, I was born into a bad situation, so I have that perspective of all the bad things, but I've also done a lot of great things that I've seeked out. I've been all around the world. I've been to top of the Eiffel Tower and freaking New York City and like all these. I've been to all over Europe, Africa, Afghanistan, Dominican Republic. I've seen some of the most beautiful parts of the world and some of the worst. So my perspective on life is quite unique compared to most people. Then also you could do a podcast, right? And as you do a podcast, you start to see other parts of the world and of life, and you can gain that perspective. And with perspective, you can be more grateful. You can have more gratitude in your life, right? Where and it's not just saying like I'm grateful I never went through that, but it's understanding that like life is beautiful. The things that we
Yes.
have are is beautiful. The opportunity that I get to wake up every day and do the things that I want. I mean, we're sitting here talking on virtual podcast.
Technology,
Yeah, I
thousands of
mean,
miles apart.
yeah. I mean, life is beautiful. Like this is an
Yes.
insane time to be alive, and so it gives you that gratitude when you don't understand like how dark and twisted the world can be. Um, it's hard to really understand the gratitude that you can possess. But with perspective and gratitude, it helps build a stronger you, right? Mentally, physically, emotionally. When you're able to express gratitude, just like I did today, my daughter got bit by the lizard, and we get in the car, and everybody's screaming and crying, and everybody's mad. Me and my wife yelled at each other. I get in the car, and I'm like, you know what? I love you guys. Like, we're gonna get through this, and today's gonna be a good day because I said so. And so you're able to use that gratitude of just being present with one another and being proud of one another and be strong. So the perspective plus gratitude is a formula for strength. It equals strength mentally, emotionally, physically. You're able to do those things. So that is like that's like one of my talking points.
Thank you. Perspective
Yeah.
and gratitude.
Yeah.
Is there anything that keeps you up at night, or do you sleep well?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot right now, so a lot of the things keep me up at the moment. As long as I put my phone down, and as long as I don't start scrolling, I'm good. Kind of get up early, so I'm usually pretty tired at night. The things that do keep me up are like I'm just I'm writing a book, and so my book stuff. I'm working on my branding, and so for example, last night I was thinking about different names for my business that I'm going to start with my speaking and kind of how to brand it and title it. Yeah. So I was kind of like, counting the sheep in my head, trying to go to sleep because I do get kind of caught up with that. Those are kind of small things though, nothing serious. Occasionally I'll hear the ice maker in the refrigerator and I think somebody's breaking in the house and then I'm awake for a next hour. But no, things have come together for me, so I'm very happy about a lot of things. So I'm doing good.
I can feel that. I can feel that. Good things are happening. The stars are
Yeah,
aligning.
they are finally.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, Seth, if you could create a quote right now for you to leave to the audience listening and the world as your legacy, what would it be?
Ooh, a quote for my legacy.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I like it's kind of maybe a little repetitive, but I like the, endure. Endure. Like you have to endure. Like to endure is to survive, is to suffer, is to go through pain, is to make it and get through hard times. Like you have to endure. So to endure, endure the suffering and creates endurance. Once again, that endurance creates character, and that character inspires hope, inspires hope in other men. That suffering creates endurance, creates character, and character creates hope in other men. That's what I would leave. That's what I hope people see from me is the amount of suffering that I've gone through and the amount of endurance that I have now, like and the character the who I am today to inspire others. Like you can do this, whether you are intentionally suffering via the gym or work or you're running a business or it is put upon you, whether you get a flat tire, spilled your coffee, somebody, you know, kills somebody in your family or you lose somebody or something happens, somebody dies, whether that suffering's intentional or by chance, then you can endure it and you come out on the other end a good positive person. So that's what I would leave as far as my quote goes.
Powerful. Enough said.
Yeah, enough said.
Yeah, enough said. So, Seth, how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, the easiest way to reach out to me is YouTube and Instagram. Instagram is really the biggest one. If you look me up, Seth Gehle, my last name is Gehle. But yeah, Seth Gehle. My Instagram is Go Beyond the Shadows, which is based off the title of my book, Strength
Mhm.
Beyond the Shadows. Yeah, so Go Beyond the Shadows is my YouTube and my Instagram. But if you Google my name, you'll see I have it'll pop up. My Instagram will pop up. My YouTube will pop up. I have a website as well, which is just sethgale.com. And then, if anybody follows along on Instagram, they'll see a lot more content like this. And then they will also see my book and everything like that when it comes out, and anything else I'm doing as far as speaking engagements, things like that goes. So that's the easiest way to get a hold of me is Instagram.
Okay. Thank you. And there you have it, guys. You heard it from Seth himself. Before we close off, Seth, I'd like to thank you personally for the work that you're doing for the world and the community around you, and for advancing every step of the way, despite the challenges, creating trails for those that will come after you. So, for the listeners, this has been that one podcast with that controversial name, You're Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Now, if you find yourself thinking that you are worthless, you are not alone. Most importantly, ask yourself a level deeper: if I am worthless, then why the heck am I here? It is because your soul have chosen to be here energetically all the way from the ethers. And for that reason itself, you are worthy and you are enough. This has been Seth Gehle, your guest of the day, and Nick Nieras, your host, signing off.